We're good? You all ready? You good? Ready? Good. All right, ready? All right. All right. What's good, y'all? Welcome back for another episode of Conversation Piece, your place to discover the untold stories of Indianapolis and all of its people. My name is Patrick Armstrong. I am your host, and I am so excited to be back here again in 2025, the year of community. Got a lot of really cool stuff that is happening in May. It is also May right now, so we're coming up on midway through the year, but May is also Asian Heritage Month, and if you're not aware, we have a lot of really cool stuff happening tangentially related to the show, so make sure you check that out. And if you are really into the episodes and conversations we've been having recently, I want to make sure that I keep saying this at the beginning of the episode, but please tell a friend, share the show. That's the best way to support us as we continue to try and reach as many people as we can here in Indianapolis. So we appreciate all of you. And because it's the year of community, I knew we could not do this year's season or this year's worth of episodes and conversations without talking to community builders. That's why I'm really excited about my conversation today. My guest today was born and raised in Chicago before relocating to the Circle City in 2021 with her husband. And what began as a way to gather casually and make new friends soon gave way to a realization. People, women in particular here in the city, were seeking a way to create real, authentic connections in Indianapolis. And after a little bit of ideating, BFF Indy was born in December of 2023. Within a year, surpassed 20,000 members and counting. And that is in large part due to their founders understanding that community can change your life. We're going to see if we can tap into some of that knowledge today. So without further ado, let's get it. It is my great joy and privilege to welcome FrancesMary Loughead to the show. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited.
100%. I have been aware of BFF Indy for a little bit, I think, because y'all are all over social media. And I think that makes sense because I think you have a background in that a little bit. But I was pleasantly surprised when you reached out because I think one of the things we talk about on the show is like we see the social media, but we don't always see what's going on behind the scenes. And I was like, okay, let's get into some storytelling. So again, I said it before we got on air, but I just want to thank you for reaching out and being interested in even coming on and engaging.
Of course.
So I want to start here. We actually have some similar timelines in life. My wife and I, before we actually came back to Indy, we lived in Chicago from 2018 to 2020. And we got married in 2021, I believe. I've been trying to remember and I've been forgetting, and I apologize, Emily. But I know that y'all, again, born and raised in Chicago, came to Indy. So I wanted to start with a couple Chicago questions, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Cubs or White Sox?
Ooh. I'm torn. My family is Cubs, but my husband and my in-laws are all White Sox. So I don't like picking sides. I say I'm a Blackhawks fan.
I love that. Is a great answer. Favorite River North bar or restaurant?
Ooh, that's tough. I was born and raised in River North, so I have to say Harry Carey's.
Okay.
Family favorite. I worked there for a little bit as well. Can't go wrong with anything on the menu.
Yep, I do like a good Harry Carey's. Most underrated part of River North?
That's also tricky. I feel like there's a lot of good hole in the walls. Obviously, the River Walk itself has grown so much over the past few years. I think before I moved out, it wasn't as popular.
Okay.
So if this was me a few years ago, I'd probably say the River Walk. I'd have to think more on that, though.
Okay. I'll take that. Best time to commute north on Lakeshore?
Ooh. I'm not sure. I feel like there's not really a good time on that.
That's probably the only correct answer. That's probably the only correct answer. All right. And then lastly, best way to get out of Chicago when coming to Indianapolis?
Ooh, my favorite way is to take Lower Wacker to Columbus I think it's 55 down to 65.
Yep.
So
You ever go 394? The kind of like the back south way instead of going to 65?
No, yeah.
Oh, I feel like I avoid a lot of wrecks because when you're transitioning from, what is that, like 294 onto 8094, like that transition area is dangerous.
Yeah,
it reminds me a lot of Indianapolis.
Yes. Usually I have my husband take that one because
Smart.
I didn't start driving until I was 21 years old.
Okay.
So I've only driven downtown twice in my life, in downtown Chicago. So I'm I stick to Lower Wacker because nobody's typically down there. Everybody thinks I'm crazy for that. But
that, honestly, I like that answer because the only reason I never liked taking Lower Wacker is because there's no service. Or I don't get service. Yeah. So then I'm getting lost because I grew up there. So I'm just like, where am I going? And there are little sideways in there that you can get lost in. Okay.
It's tricky.
Interesting. All right. I wasn't going to ask you this question, but now I'm going to ask you. Because I'm finding out about this driving. And I think that you... grew up in the city, went to public school, but then ended up going to high school in Elmhurst down the suburbs.
Correct, yes.
Your dad worked at the airport at O'Hare, so he was already going out there.
Yes.
But I know you said you made the transition because you grew up Catholic, and so like it was like a faith alignment. My first part of this question was, how did you convince your parents to make the commute to a suburb school?
Yes.
I get that he's kind of going out that way a little bit, but I'm like, my wife worked in the North Burbs when we lived up there.
Nice.
And I was like, I don't want to drive up there to see you. I'm sorry.
That's fair.
Just because of the traffic. But I'm just curious, like, how sometimes that transition happens from city to suburb.
Of course. So there's a couple different parts to it, I'll say. So there was a bus that came to like the Rush Hospital District over by the United Center on the west side. Yep. So the timing just worked out that the same time my dad was going to work was the time that he would drop us off at the bus, and or sometimes we would even take the metro out to Elmhurst. Yeah. But then also with that, the school system in Chicago, obviously Chicago public schools, not exactly the best, but I found that the elementary school that I went to, Tagdana High School, it was very new at the time. Okay. There was just a lot of not so good things happening there. Sure. And I found Timothy Christian and thought it would be a good fit. So I think that along with just the timing of everything fit really well, and was able to convince my parents to let me go to Elmhurst.
Did you seek out that school yourself? Did you like to do the research to figure out where you kind of wanted to go?
Yeah, a little bit. A lot of it had to do with like influence from friends. Oh, okay. So a lot of my friends two of my friends that I went to elementary school with ended up talking about Timothy Christian and Elmhurst, and ended up finding my space there.
Yeah, I love it. I've heard you talk about that transition out there being like, oh, people can have backyards and pets because you grew up in a condo and you couldn't have pets in your building. So it's just like just changing perspective on life like that. And then also like that kind of worked in reverse, and like the kids at Timothy Christian had idea of like what it looked like to live in a condo. It's like, I've heard you said, do you live in a hotel?
Yes.
Like that kind of thing.
Sweet Life of Zach and Cody situation. Yeah. Absolutely.
I was wondering what the biggest misconception you had to overcome when navigating kind of that circumstance in high school. Like, what was the thing that you felt like you had to really push back against?
Good question. I think a lot of it, the hotel thing kind of stuck with me. Sure. Of like, this is such a different world. Trying to communicate that in a way where I think I had some friends that were from the city that might have thought they were like better than some of the other people in the area. And I'm like, no, that's not me. Like, I love learning about different people, and we just grew up differently, and that's not a bad thing. It's just different, you know? So kind of pushing back against that. I don't know how to say it, but just people thinking that they're better than. It's like, that's not who I am. So that was a little bit of a challenge, especially being in high school. There's a lot of drama and a lot of misconceptions. So the kids can be mean. I mean, and even high school, we're still kids, I think, and kids are mean. Yes.
And we come up with a lot of assumptions. Yes. And we act on our biases.
Exactly. Yes. The assumption that's the word I was looking for.
Okay. I think what's really interesting about that to me is also in conjunction with like your use of public transportation. Like that was like that's how you lived. And I think you can really glean a lot of perspective on people in the world just by being in a situation like that. And I think Chicago's public transportation houses individuals from all manner of life. do you remember ever just like, I mean, and maybe it was just like secondhand to you, but just like, what did you pick up when you were just like on the bus or the train when you're taking the metro? Like, what are you feeling? What are you vibing with like in those moments?
Yeah. So I will say I started taking public transportation when I was very young, like kindergarten age. My grandpa would take my sister and I on the 22 bus all the way from Marina City to Ogden School. So it was about a 15-minute ride, and I would just take in the sights. Obviously, we're so young, so we don't have any phones or anything. It was just about spending time together and going to school. So I never really picked up, it was funny, on the street names. So I'm always about like locations. It's like, right now, I'm like, oh, in Indianapolis, where are you? Don't tell me street names, because I can pick up on, I'm more of a visual person.
Yeah.
So
you're a landmark.
Yes. So that's kind of something that I don't know if it's exactly like a vibe, but just like taking in the city and enjoying it.
For sure. What's the most like, I think here in Indy, and I'm sure you now know this, we don't have like the greatest public transportation. We got some, like there's a bus that goes up and down one road.
I passed it on the way here,
but it's like, we're still coming up in that area a little bit. What do you think the biggest misconception about like public transportation is? Just in general, somebody who like, that was a huge part of your life. And you just like was something you got to just do. What do you think that like a misconception people have about that in a place like Indy that doesn't necessarily have something like that?
Yeah, I will say I've never taken the public transit in Indy, so I can't speak to that just because now I'm driving. So I'm definitely in a car most of the time. But I guess like speaking from the Chicago standpoint, and now it might be a little bit different, but that it's not exactly the safest. Depending on like the time of day, you just kind of have to use your best judgment. Know kind of like your area and where you're going and the time of day. I've had people say to me that they've taken the red line in Chicago at like 12 midnight. And I'm like, no, don't do that. Make sure you're safe. So
kind of a situational awareness.
Yes, exactly. So that's one of the things that comes to mind.
Okay, as a driver now, what's the biggest thing that you miss about public transportation, especially because we don't really have it here?
I miss walking. Silly enough, like walking to the bus or walking to the train stop. I would take sometimes the red line. I went to DePaul University, so I would take the red line up to Lincoln Park and would walk to the merchandise mart and be able to take in those sights and just enjoy the quiet morning rather than just like hopping into the car. And that was my workout too. So
that's true.
I feel like I'm sitting a lot more.
Yeah. Because y'all live in
We're in Noblesville.
Yeah,
so we've hopped around a little bit, but just ended up in Noblesville in December.
Yeah. Always been on the north end, or were you down this way at all?
Yeah. So we, when we got married, my husband was still finishing up school at IU.
Okay.
So we were in Bloomington for about 4 months.
All right.
Enjoyed it for sure. And then we moved to Brownsburg, just because, not jumping ahead too much, but it was very equidistant between the racetrack and my husband's office.
Sure.
And then we moved to Carmel because it was I feel like more of my vibe, a little busy, lots of restaurants and stores. And then we just bought a house in Noblesville.
Nice. Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
Slowly moving
excited.
up and now east. So I feel you. Okay. Well, that brings us to getting married. Another thing that I feel like we are timeline-wise similar on is just having to plan a marriage and like get married during a pandemic.
Absolutely.
I feel like we lucked out because when we got engaged, we planned to get married 2 years after our engagement. So we got engaged in 2019. We were planning to get married in 2021, and we had a vendor reach out and say, "Hey, you should probably start moving the schedule on all your stuff right now." So I wanted to ask you, what was the most difficult thing about that process for y'all, like planning a wedding during a pandemic?
Funny enough, we also got engaged in 2019.
Okay.
And yes.
There we go.
Very similar to exact timeline. So we took that first year and just kind of enjoyed engagement. We were very young too, at the time, still in college, but we just know we wanted to be together.
Yeah.
Started planning that second year, obviously, of engagement, and then COVID hit. And it wasn't really up until I think the beginning of 2021 where we really had to make a decision. We were all set to have our wedding in Chicago. And I think paperwork was signed and everything. And then we were told that, of course, we both have very big families. I'm half Greek, so we definitely want that camaraderie
100%.
and all of our family there. So we decided in January to move our wedding to Wisconsin because of the restrictions. So we wanted to make sure that everybody was there. We knew we wanted to get married in June 2021. We didn't want to wait any longer. So yeah, that's kind of, it was challenging, but I don't know. I give it all to God, because it wouldn't have worked out the way that it did without, I don't know.
A lot of just like timing things and stuff. We feel like we had like 120 people at our wedding. We got married here in Indianapolis, but we felt like that was the first like big gathering for a lot of the people in our circles in that time. Do you remember like what it felt like to just be in community in that way and celebrate like that during a really stressful, like traumatic period for a lot of people?
Of course. Yeah. There was a lot of different feelings, obviously. You're getting married, all the people that whenever I talk about our wedding, I think about all the people that we love in one room. Like that's never going to happen again. There's people that have since passed that were there, and it's just a crazy, crazy feeling. And then adding a pandemic on top of that, where we haven't seen each other in years, is even more of like an undescribable feeling.
For sure. So you're in Bloomington, and then you're in Brownsburg, and your husband is going into the office, but you work remotely.
Yes.
And I feel like when you were here, so I guess 2021, like at the back half, things started to open up a little bit more. Like you kind of start to meet a little in person.
Yes.
So I know the first few meetups that you had were centered around like, I need someone to watch The Bachelor with.
Yes.
I need someone to watch these shows with and to talk about these shows with. I was wondering how you started to build and connect with folks, because you were like we were all kind of just in our own little virtual bubbles.
Yes.
Did the community building start there, or how did that work?
Virtually, especially. I know that people talk about the Bumble for Friends app. You have Bumble for dating, but then they also had Bumble for Friends. And I was like, why not like try it out? Like, where else am I going to meet friends?
Sure.
So would swipe, and to this day, I'm like, it doesn't feel like super genuine. It's like the dating apps, like you're looking at 3 pictures and then like a paragraph and a couple questions. Like you don't know everything about the person.
Yeah, we're taking some big swings off of very little information.
Yes. And I'm like, I don't want to be, I'm not trying to be judgmental or anything. Of course, I want to give everybody like a chance. So everybody that I met on like through the app, and a lot of them said they like watching The Bachelor. So I said, do you want to come over and watch it with me? Because I don't want to force my husband to. So ended up being a group of 15 to 20 girls on a weekly basis. And then that turned into like wine nights and dinners. And I don't know, we went to pumpkin patches, things like that. So it was a solid group of girls. Yeah.
When did I talked about in the intro, like this was a moment of realization. When did that start was that kind of a sudden thing, or did that kind of creep up in like, oh, I'm recognizing this, but I don't really know exactly what it is yet? Like,
yeah, it definitely creeped up. It wasn't sudden by any means. I think reflecting over the past few years, it's like, oh yeah, people really do need community and really do struggle with making friends, and it's taboo to talk about. Nobody wants to go out there and be like, I don't have friends. Like, so it's something that I feel like bringing to light has really helped a lot of women, especially myself, because it was a struggle moving here, and for others it is too.
Well, that's what my wife and I talk about a lot, is like, it is hard to make friends as an adult.
Yes.
Like, why? And so that was one of the things I want to talk to you about, because you're like the expert on building friendships as adults. No, I'm just kidding. But like, that's what you've done. Like you fostered this community where like genuine relationships can form. Why do you think it's so hard for adults to make friends?
Yeah, I've thought about that a lot myself, obviously. Founding BFF Indy. Just trying to relate to so many women across the community. I think a lot of it comes from a routine. Growing up as kids, like we're going to school every day with the same people in the same classroom from K to 8. High school, very similar, might switch a little bit. Same thing with college. Once you graduate college, you're in the workforce. And of course, like you have your coworkers, but in my case, I was remote. I am remote, and my coworkers are all over the country, and like Atlanta and California, and even in Canada. So just everywhere, it's really hard to make that connection. But
you can only do so much through Zoom.
Exactly. So without that interaction, and a lot of people have also mentioned that when they go to work, a lot of their coworkers are either like a lot older or just in different phases of their life, which is okay. And I do think that there's this I don't know if it's stigma that every person that you meet is going to be your best friend. That's not true. And that's okay.
For sure.
You're not always going to connect with people right off the bat. And I think also judgment comes into it. People are scared to put themselves out there.
Definitely.
And it's a very scary thing. Absolutely.
For sure.
But it's also very rewarding sometimes.
100%. Well, I think when you become friends with someone, it's because you've allowed yourself to be vulnerable with that person.
Exactly.
And that's a hard thing to do because we've not really been historically like affirmed to be vulnerable or tap into our emotional bandwidth.
Yes.
It's just been like, it'll be fine. Essentially just go and just just do your thing. Be yourself. Like whatever that means. It's difficult to like share intimately like that. And I think what is awesome has been to see or to learn about how quickly the growth happened. But I was wondering how much from kind of like creeping realization, how much like beta testing goes into that period of realization to formalization in December of 2023.
Yeah. Good question. There was really like no testing by any means.
Okay.
To be quite honest with you, it all came very naturally.
Sure.
That it's like all these women clearly need friends.
Yeah.
Well, if people come and I don't know, enjoy it, that's great. If it grows, great. If not, like water under the bridge, it's fine.
Yeah.
But
like
it ended up
growing
growing
naturally out of what you were already doing.
Yes.
Did you feel like, so it's just like, so what I guess then made December the time to be like, okay, this is the time to take this, make it a quote unquote official, I guess?
Yeah, that's exactly when we made it official. I found that there were a lot of opportunities with different businesses in Indianapolis. And there was like, I was going back and forth about making the jump into making things, like you said, quote, official, kind of becoming that LLC, officially partnering with different businesses. And our mission is to make it as affordable and accessible for the community members to join the community. But just thinking about all those partnerships and ways that we can bring the community together, like selfishly in ways that I needed when I moved here. Realizing that other women need that too, was definitely kind of that nudging point of you should really do this. And
for sure.
It all came together within like a couple days and I got really lucky. So
yeah, I love it. Well, I like it's wild to think about too, because you also like work full time and I saw that you did like you helped manage like 42 trade shows or some shit last year, like a lot of stuff. Like, so you're busy, but at the same time also like managing a multi-thousand member community. Like, how do you, and then, but it's like you said, you know, there's like a little luck comes into it and stuff just happens quickly. How do you balance like, or how are you navigating the balance of like community building and work professionally and then deciding, hey, community can also be a bit of my professional aspect?
Yes. Yeah. Good question. I was actually thinking about that. I get that question about balance at least twice a week. Like, how do you do all this?
Yeah.
I'm like, honestly, my answer is always, I don't know. But I did think about that actually yesterday. And I'm like, you know what? I love a good checklist. All of my tasks I have written out with little boxes.
Okay. I like it.
That definitely helps manage balance and like priorities, things that I need to do today versus tomorrow versus the end of the week. And then also just relying on like my friends and family too, to, I don't know, help me out a little bit. And
for sure.
Just give me that oomph that I need, you know, that little nudge.
We had a guest on, Alyssa M. Pink, and we had talked about, or she said that somebody had asked her, like, what does work-life balance look like for you? And she's like, well, it doesn't exist.
That's
like,
also true.
I have 2 kids. Like, I'm working full-time. I do, like, this stuff with over here. And it's like, it's prioritizing.
Exactly.
It's not that I can balance these things, but it's like, I wake up every day and I'm like, what needs done and what can I do right now?
Yeah, there's no true separation of, like, work and personal life by any means.
So speaking of, like, getting into the formalization aspect of it, is this just like you running the things that you do? Do you have team members? Do you have people that step in a volunteer capacity to help you out?
Yeah,
like,
good
what does
question.
That look like?
So I started this all by myself. And within the past like 5 to 6 months, we did bring on a few ambassadors, which has been really exciting. So volunteer opportunity for the ladies to come out, kind of do what I do at the events and making sure that everything is organized and just goes off without a hitch.
Sure.
We had a recent walk on the Monon where we had a couple ambassadors just go meet the ladies, take the walk, and that was pretty much it. So we have about 5 of them, and they're all great, and I couldn't do it without them today. So
for sure. Well, it allows you to expand the reach of the events and the scope, I guess, of what you can do. What does that look like when it comes to, because you said, you've been working with small businesses and other businesses here in the city. And part of the formalization process was just like, well, let's make it easier to do that work together. What have you found has been like a key to like fostering those relationships with other small businesses? Because it's like everybody wants to tap into community, but sometimes sometimes people can't see the value like on the institution side. So how do you navigate that conversation?
Oh, great question. Thinking about it can be difficult sometimes. Some people get it right off the bat of like, it's a win-win situation. We're creating community. Your business is getting more traction and more brand awareness as well. Sometimes, like you said, it's a little more challenging to navigate that conversation. But that's when I love getting on a good phone call and just walking them through different examples of events that we've done before, or just we've partnered on like Instagram posts and reels and all of the digital stuff. But
for sure.
Showing them just that how much people can get from digital. It's very, very new in this day and age too. Just thinking about social media. I think a lot of people who are older don't really understand, respectfully, don't understand the reach of social media. I don't think that BFF Indy would be what it is today without social media and Instagram, and obviously our Facebook group too. It's just been incredible. So
well, you've utilized it as the tool that I think it's meant to be to help bolster what you do in person, like in real life. And I think that's maybe some dissonance between our older generations or the folks that may be heading some institutions who don't quite understand like how much further you can go. Can you walk us through like what that, like when you get that initial pushback, like what is it like? How do you start to kind of hook? Not that you have to give away your secrets, but like how do you just like hook it in? I know this is like what you kind of do for work. Like you position products and stuff, and you tell the story.
Exactly.
How do you position that story for folks who, like here in Indiana, we want to be the hub of the small business and we want to support small business owners, but like there is disconnect sometimes about what that means and what that looks like.
Of course. Yeah. So it's all, like you said, all about storytelling and data too. Telling that story of how the women want to come together and just find community. And it's not always at like a bar or something. Like that's one of the things I really found struggle at, like coming to Indiana and struggled with. A lot of people would just go out to eat and go out to the bars. I'm not one to, don't get me wrong, I love a good glass of wine like in my pajamas, but going out
we're very much bar culture here.
Yes. So trying to bridge that gap between community and people that I know the sober community is really growing as well, which is fantastic. And just again, telling that story with the data that shows that these are the women coming together and they want to make friends in a fun way that they can connect with small businesses too. And just showing them those numbers that it really does help when we partner together.
Yeah. Anything that you've discovered that doesn't really connect with folks, like, and things that you've just had to like, we tried this and it just like, it wasn't working out. So we just scrapped that.
I think there was a big difference when I found coming from Chicago to Indy is the cost of goods.
Oh yeah, definitely.
The cost of events, the cost of just things in general. So very, very early on, I tried a brunch. It was like a $50 kind of, you get 4 different things. And I was like, this is a great price. People did not think that, which is totally fine. But again, kind of shifting that perspective of Indianapolis is very different than where I've been before.
For sure.
And again, that's not a bad thing. It's just kind of growing and I don't know, getting more connected to what people are looking for here. And since then, I've definitely kind of learned that, I don't know, the cost is definitely, and we try, again, making our events affordable and accessible is something that we really strive to do. So since then, I'm like, okay.
Well, you don't hit 20,000 people by making it exclusive, like by making it like just out of reach for a lot of people. And obviously you continue to grow because it's like, it's resonating and people are like, yes, come into this. You need to be a part of this community. on the flip side of that, like this might be the unexpected thing, but like what unexpected thing have you found as well? I guess maybe that not that doesn't work, but that does work that you're like, oh, like I didn't realize that, I guess, women in Indy would connect over this particular thing.
Yes. There's a few different things, I think.
Yeah.
I'm not one, I have a cat, but I don't have a dog. I want a dog. People love their dogs.
Yeah.
Excuse me. But people love their dogs. I'm also not a runner. People love running. Love running. We recently partnered with the 500 Festival with the
awesome.
Indy Mini and Delta Dental 500 Festival 5K.
Nice.
So tons of people have signed up for that. And then we also have our run club too. So our first run club had, I think, over 100 RSVPs, which was insane. Unfortunately, the first day it was pouring down rain. It was very cold.
Come on, Indiana.
But I know. But we're off without a hitch. I mean, so many women coming together and just enjoying their community and those things that I'm not super in tune with, like running or dogs or anything like that, are the ones that surprise me. But looking back, I'm like, I'm not surprised. It's something that these women are passionate about.
For sure. We do love a good run club.
Yeah.
Mike knows about it. But so as a non-runner, like how do you start a run club? Like how do you realize, okay, this is what they want to do? And like, okay, I don't do this, but I want to make it a part of what we're doing here.
Yeah, it's all about community, I think.
Sure.
We had a community member actually post on the Facebook page. Her name's Cece. She said, I want to start running with people. I don't know exactly where to go, but I need just those people to be with. Again, that community. It all goes back to that. Tons and tons of comments, like hundreds of comments, which was incredible. I saw the post, got a little busy with work. I was traveling.
Yeah, right. You were
like,
no, I don't want to run.
Yeah.
Hide this.
But I was thinking about reaching out to her and she beat me to the punch. So got an email from her and talked about potentially making a run club official. And now it's on the calendar twice a month. And she's, no pun intended, running it and just doing such a great job. And that's kind of how that came to be. She's super passionate about that. And because I'm not as passionate about running, I want it to be genuine, especially. So having her come to me and just kind of putting it out on the table of this is what she wants to do. This is how she wants to bring it together. I said, yeah, let's do it.
I love that. I think there's not enough of like, I'll support you in like what you want to do, even if it's not the thing that I want to do. How often does that happen? Do people come to with ideas?
Yeah, a few different times. At the very beginning, I'm also not a reader. I sound so boring right now. Like I don't run. I don't have a dog. I'm not a reader.
One glass of wine with my cat in my pajamas.
Yes. While watching Love on the Spectrum. Absolutely. Yes, exactly. That's my life, but I love it. So book club was a thing at the very beginning. People love reading books. Another one of our ambassadors, Nikki, runs that and does this great job.
Nice.
They pick a different book every month and women come together and just talk about the book, learn more about each other on a monthly basis. And it's just been a great time. So
how strong was like the women and the community of women that you had in your life growing up? Like I feel like what you're doing now has to have a foundation in something like that. Like how was that something that was really prevalent for you growing up?
Absolutely. So going back to my childhood, thinking about my family, on my mom's side of the family, there's 12 grandchildren and 3 of them are boys.
Okay.
So lots of women. My mom's siblings are all women. I have 2 or 3 aunts, 2 of them being twins. So just lots of feminine energy going on growing up. My dad also worked a lot of the time, which is fine. I just didn't spend as much time with him growing up as I do now.
For sure.
So lots of women growing up, lots of drama, but all good things.
Yeah.
So going into like high school as well, or elementary school, high school, obviously. Yeah. Growing up, all girlfriends, and then finding that community here in Indy too was really important.
I love it because it's like sometimes we can lose some of the connectivity or the connective tissue that we have to like our foundational roots as we get older, just because the world jades us, unfortunately.
Yes.
And that can go away. And I like when folks find ways to grab hold and pass through, not just to like help themselves, which is obviously great, and to like figure out how does this thing that I've had, how can I make it available or accessible to folks who maybe have not experienced that? What's been the most rewarding aspect of connecting folks in this way?
Mm-hmm. There are days where I sit back and, of course, working remote and not always being at all of the events because I have my great ambassadors.
Yeah.
Just thinking about like, oh, is this really working? Sometimes that comes to mind, and I'm very open with people about that.
Yeah.
And then seeing like a Facebook post or somebody saying, I met my best friends through this community, or I met my roommate, or just I met a friend, period, point blank. I went to dinner with somebody. Just seeing that community be built within just our Facebook group, and something that, like, not to pat myself on the back, but like something that I created is just a crazy, like, rewarding thing. And it's incredible to think about all the friendships that have been made and Indy.
I love it. We had Leslie Bailey on the Open Door, and she came on talking about, having to close Maven Space, but the opportunity to be able to move back into journalism and Indy Maven.
Yes.
And we talked a lot about community and like the space that she gave for women who were looking to, especially for small business support, but community specifically. And afterwards, when I was sharing clips of our conversation, like, they weren't like the highest view counts that we ever had, but some of the highest engagement, because you saw the community show up in that way. And I think when I see your BFF Indy content, like, I see the community engaging in there. You have a huge community, so your numbers are up too. I'm always chasing the numbers, so like the numbers are up. And like, there is such a thing as like an inflated number. And I think what I have really been inspired by with the work that you do is just the way that your community continues to show up in that way.
Thank you. Yeah.
And I feel like that, again, is that you've taken that connective tissue that you had and like put it out in the world.
Thank you. Yes, it's definitely interesting. We have, not to get off on a tangent, but we do have our newsletter that we send out twice a month. So try not to spam people, but seeing that engagement, like you said, those numbers, just the engagement rate and click-through rate of those, not to get too technical, but people really do engage and are super interested with not only connecting with each other, but their local businesses and community too. So it's super cool to see.
Yeah. You literally a community builder. What does, or how do you define community?
I would say coming together for the same purpose. Just in my case, it would be finding friends and just getting together to enjoy each other's presence.
Yeah. I ask because we have a recurring segment called Give Them Their Flowers. Shout out to Madeline McKinnon, Frida's Flowers, where we ask our guests to shout out a person or persons that they feel like deserve their flowers at the moment. So I wanted to ask you, FrancesMary, who do you think deserves their flowers right now? And who do you want to give them to?
Oh, the first person that comes to mind is my mom.
Yeah.
It's been a tough couple months, not to go too in depth, but my grandpa passed away recently.
Sorry.
Thank you. So she's just trying to rebuild that community around her, between like her job and family and things like that. So I would just say my mom.
Shout out to your mom.
Yeah, she's done a great job. So
yeah. Well, I mean, we've just been talking about it. Like, part of your connective tissue to leading thousands of women to coming together and building community in that way. And then when community comes together in this way, and something that I've learned over the last few years, but like thinking about in terms of what it means to grieve when you go through something like this, when you lose a loved one. I did a lot of growing up grieving in isolation, and I've learned a lot about the power of grieving community.
Yes.
And how almost necessary it is to be able to do so. And I think, based on what you've shared about having such a large family and having like that connective tissue, it's nice to know, hopefully, that y'all have that community to grieve with.
Yes, of course. Yeah, leaning on each other has definitely been, the most helpful thing throughout the past few months. It's definitely, obviously, a difficult loss, but we've all experienced it differently. And just having each other and remembering those good memories has been something that, our family community has really, I think, appreciated.
For sure. Okay, so one of the reasons I have not asked about your husband is because I feel like in all the other interviews, he comes up a lot at the beginning. He comes up very first, and I'm like, we're not here to talk about him. But I am going to bring him up now as we start to wind down a little bit.
I love talking about him.
He is big into racing.
Yes.
Is a race car driver?
Yes.
Was a race car driver. Still racing.
Yes. So he races amateurly in Formula V, Sports Car Club of America racing. So
gotcha.
Yes.
Were you a race fan prior?
No.
Not
at all.
And y'all met back. Was he racing back in the day when you first met?
Yeah, so we met in high school.
Yeah.
He was racing, I think, karts at the time. So I didn't know him like too well at that time. But then once we started dating, he started getting into the Formula V racing, and it all went from there.
That makes sense. Well, I know that was one of the reasons that brought you here, because he works for one of the teams here that's based here, I believe.
Yes.
You are, would you consider yourself a race fan now?
Now, absolutely, yeah.
What is the style of racing that you are most fond of?
I love IndyCar.
IndyCar?
Yes.
Okay.
I know a lot of people talk about Formula One and with the Netflix series and all of that. I've tried to watch it. It's not as exciting. Respectfully to Formula One fans. I don't want to hurt anybody's feelings. But IndyCar, there's just so much passing. And obviously, I think our background in just personal life, knowing some of the drivers, their personalities and things like that. It's more fun when you're obviously more involved. Even watching it on TV, it's something that we look forward to every summer.
100%. And I think the nice thing about sports in general, and then racing as well, is like you racing as sport. Sports, in sports, you get to go places. Like it takes you a lot of different places. Where, since you've been here for the last few years, where have you found the best racing at besides IMS?
So I will say the team that he worked for only did the 500. So we didn't travel too much in terms of IndyCar racing, but we did, even though his team wasn't racing at Laguna Seca, that was super exciting. Out in California in Monterey. Yeah. We went 2 years ago, I think it was, and it was one of the most exciting races I've ever seen.
Nice.
So I think that would be it. And it's super pretty. Yeah. So can't go wrong there.
Definitely not. All right. Last question on the race bit.
Okay.
I feel like this year is about not only community, but dispelling misconceptions about things. Indy's race city. We're going through a slogan change right now where I think we're trying to incorporate some of that, and I don't know how that's going, but I think there is a big misconception about just racing culture in general. And as somebody who wasn't a fan, but has now like become immersed in it and is definitely a fan, what would you say is like, what would you tell somebody who has just a misunderstanding of what racing is? What do you think is that misconception that you want to dispel for somebody who's like, I'm either on the fence or I just am not about it?
Ooh, good question. I think there's a lot of misconceptions about racing. Nothing that I've heard specifically, but I know F1 is so kind of like on one side, like glitz and glamour, and people go there basically to be seen. And that could be a misconception on my end. But just on that end versus like NASCAR, where you see just a lot of different people, which is great.
Sure.
I think just give it a chance. I think. Yeah, I don't have a good answer for that, I feel.
Okay,
but
let's do it this way then. Best way to get into racing. Like if somebody's like, how do I get into it? What would you suggest?
Question. So just either watch it on TV if you don't have access. If you're not in Indianapolis, which I'm sure a lot of your listeners are, watch it on TV. It's on Fox Sports now. So definitely I think a lot of people should have access to it. If not, I think it's IndyCar itself does a lot of watch parties now. They just recently had one at the hangar for the Long Beach race.
Oh, nice.
Where a lot of people get together. I know a lot of ladies whose significant others also work in the industry go there to watch the race. So it's a great community, not only of women, but just people in general. Yeah. And everybody's willing to take each other in and teach. It's a very difficult sport to learn. There's a lot of different flags, a lot of different things that go into it. So being open to it and learning about it is definitely a way to get started.
Yeah. As with all things, be open, be willing to learn, be curious.
Yes.
And lead with affirmation and non-judgment. We like to be non-judgmental around here. FrancesMary, I appreciate you coming through and talking about and sharing a lot of your story and a lot of like what we're doing and why. As we get ready to kind of close it down here, what are you really looking forward to this year in 2025 with your community?
I think just building more of it. It's grown so much over the last year itself that I think we can do more. There's always people moving into Indianapolis. Unfortunately, there's always people moving away too, but those people leave people behind and they need friends.
Right.
So just growing more friendships and getting people more knowledgeable about the community in general.
I love it. Anything specific coming up? This is week 1 of May. So we've got 7 months left. What do you got coming up over the next few months?
We have a lot of things going on. We have a lot of craft activities. I know we're going to do a few walks on the Monon, along with Indianapolis Indian Games. The list goes on. Obviously, we have our monthly book club and our twice a month run club too. Just lots of fun things. Lots of things happening.
Okay, I guess the optimal question is, how do you get involved? If a woman in Indy is like, I need friends and I need to find somebody to watch The Bachelor with, how do you get involved in the community?
Of course. So our community is free to join. You can either join on our Facebook page or keep up on our Instagram and our website. Our website's bffindianapolis.com. Our Instagram is bff.indy, and then our Facebook group is BFF Indy. And it's a private Facebook group too. So if you just have a question about, I don't know, where the best restaurant is, you're more than welcome to join and check it out there.
Nice. You see, just a simple question can lead you to lifelong friendships.
Exactly.
You never know what might happen. Well, we're going to have all of that linked in the show notes as well for anybody that wants to connect through there. Other than that, I just have one final question before I let you get out of here. For folks, for women specifically who are out there watching this right now and they're like, you know, I am really inspired by all of these things that you're saying, but I am just not, I just feel like I don't know how to get into this mode of like seeking this relationship out. What would you say to them? What advice do you give to folks who are just like, still like, how do I need that little extra nudge?
Yes. No, you're not alone. There are a lot of women that are in the same position. So I hear it at every single event that I go to. Oh, I wasn't going to come today, but I'm really glad that I did. So just know that taking that first step is really important and critical into making new friendships. If you want to make new friends, you can't just sit on the couch. And that's something that I was told very lovingly.
Sure.
And that I think about a lot, that if I didn't take this step, I wouldn't have as many friends as I do now the community that's been built. So just know you're not alone. And if you need a friendly face at an event, just feel free to reach out to me. I'm glad to connect.
I love it. Okay, I actually do have one more question.
Okay.
What are you watching right now?
Oh, we just finished Love on the Spectrum.
Oh, okay.
Yes. So
I think my wife, is that on Netflix? Okay, I think my wife just started that.
Yes. I won't spoil anything, but great season.
Nice. What's up next?
I don't know yet. That's something that we got to figure out. We've been watching a couple movies recently, but we're into the true crime cases as well. So we finished Fox Hollow Murders not too long ago.
Okay.
Big on Hulu.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of the Dateline podcast because just the TV show's audio put onto the podcast.
Yes.
So they're like, seen here doing this. And I just can't help but laugh.
Yes.
So, well, FrancesMary, thank you so much. It's BFF Indy. Make sure you go check it out. Everything here in the show notes. Appreciate you coming by and appreciate you sharing all of this and everything with us.
Thank you so much.
100%.
Thank you.
For everybody else out there, new episodes every Tuesday, YouTube, wherever you get your podcasts, conversationpeacepod.com for the archives, for merch, and for the open door. Make sure you check that out if you're interested in participating. Again, we got a lot of really cool stuff coming up in May, so make sure you keep it tuned to us at Conversation Peace Pod on Instagram. And that's about it. For the team here, John Overton and Popular Rapture on the mics, Mike Lee and Mike Lee Productions on the cameras. Shout out to Pattern and shout out to the Studs for the space. Shout out to Madeline McKinnon and Frida's Flowers for these beautiful flowers. Shout out to FrancesMary Loughead and BFF Indy for being a wonderful, wonderful guest and an incredible organization in the city. And last but not least, shout out to me for doing this, I guess. I'm Patrick Armstrong and this is Conversation Piece. See y'all soon. Good? You all ready? You good?